The lecture hall buzzed with the usual chatter of Galactic Military Academy cadets as Professor Zethkar activated the holographic display. Students from dozens of species filled the tiered seating, Vorthak with their crystalline exoskeletons, graceful Etherians floating in their biosuits, and hulking Gornath delegates occupying the reinforced back rows. Today we examine primitive warfare tactics, Professor Zethkar announced, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled students. Specifically, we'll observe footage from a recently discovered species called humans from the planet Earth. Cadet Riza, a young Vorthak warrior scholar, leaned forward with interest. His translucent carapace caught the blue light of the projector as he activated his neural recorder. Beside him, Ana, an Etherian diplomatic student, gracefully adjusted her biosuit sensory filters to better process the upcoming visual data. These humans, the professor continued, represent a typical Class 7 civilization. Pre-FTL, primitive weapons, basic metallurgy. Their conflicts should provide amusing examples of inefficient combat doctrine. The first hologram materialized, grainy footage of what appeared to be human soldiers in a desert environment. The aliens watched with mild curiosity as figures in camouflaged clothing moved across sandy terrain, carrying projectile weapons that seemed laughably crude compared to plasma rifles or quantum disruptors. Note the primitive chemical propulsion weapons, Professor Zethkar pointed with one of his tentacles. Inefficient, loud, requiring constant ammunition resupply. Observe how they... His words trailed off as the footage continued. The human soldiers, pinned down by enemy fire, didn't retreat as expected. Instead, they began coordinating with an efficiency that made several alien cadets sit up straighter. Riza's compound eyes focused intently as one human, wounded and bleeding, continued to provide covering fire for his retreating squad. Professor, Riza's synthesized voice crackled. Why doesn't the injured specimen retreat to preserve itself? Primitive pack loyalty, the professor dismissed, though uncertainty crept into his tone. Watch how easily they'll break when... The hologram shifted to new footage. Humans in urban combat. What happened next silenced the entire lecture hall. A human squad outnumbered 3-1 had barricaded themselves in a building. Instead of surrendering, they fought with a coordination and tenacity that defied all known military doctrine. When their ammunition ran low, they switched to blade weapons. When those broke, they used improvised tools. When one fell, another immediately took his position. By the eternal spiral, whispered Ana, her biosuit's emotional processors detecting elevated stress patterns in the room. They're not retreating. They can't be that stupid, muttered a Gornath cadet. No species fights to extinction over tactical positions of minimal strategic value. Professor Zethkar's confidence wavered as he switched to the next file. This footage was different, clearer, more recent. It showed a human military base under siege by what appeared to be a superior alien force. The aliens in the lecture hall recognized the attackers, Hegemony shock troops, one of the most feared military units in known space. What they witnessed next changed everything. The humans didn't just fight, they adapted in real time. When the Hegemony forces used energy shields, the humans switched to kinetic weapons. When the aliens deployed aerial units, human soldiers appeared with shoulder-mounted rockets seemingly from nowhere. Most disturbing of all, when individual humans were clearly outmatched, they didn't flee. They charged. Riza watched a human soldier, clearly dying from plasma burns, tackle a Hegemony warrior twice his size and detonate what appeared to be an explosive device. Both combatants vanished in the blast. Suicide tactics, Ana breathed, her voice filled with something between horror and awe. But coordinated suicide tactics. They're sacrificing themselves strategically. The final piece of footage was the most unsettling. It showed human children, their young, being trained in combat scenarios. Not just physical combat, but tactical thinking, strategic planning, and worst of all, the same unflinching willingness to sacrifice for the group that they'd witnessed in the adults. Professor Zethkar shut off the projector with shaking appendages. The lecture hall fell into absolute silence. Professor, Riza's voice cut through the quiet. What happened to the Hegemony forces in that last engagement? The professor consulted his datapad with obvious reluctance. According to intelligence reports, they withdrew. The humans sustained 78% casualties but held their position. The Hegemony declared the territory non-viable for occupation. A Gornath cadet raised his massive arm. Sir, our military databases show the hegemony has never retreated from a Class 7 civilization. Before. Correct. Anna's biosuit flickered as her species' natural empathic abilities processed what she'd witnessed. Professor, I'm detecting something unusual in their behavioral patterns. These humans, they don't fight like they're trying to win. They fight like they're trying to make their enemies pay the highest possible price for victory. And what, asked Riza slowly, does that suggest about their civilization? Professor Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that made every student in the room pay attention. It suggests, Cadet Riza, that we may need to reconsider our classification system, a species that treats every battle as a potential last stand, that conditions even their young to think tactically, that refuses to surrender even when facing superior technology. He paused, manipulating his datapad. Perhaps primitive is the wrong word. What's the right word, Professor? Anna asked. Professor Zethkar looked at the frozen image of human soldiers on the display, bloodied, outnumbered, but advancing nonetheless. Dangerous, he said quietly. The word is dangerous. As the students filed out of the lecture hall, discussions erupted in a dozen different languages and communication methods. But one thought echoed through the collective consciousness of every species present. If these humans ever developed faster than light technology, the galaxy would never be the same. In the archived files of the Galactic Military Academy, the classification for humanity was quietly changed from Class 7 primitive civilization to species of interest, monitor closely. Some called it paranoia. Others called it wisdom. Most called it too late.